Hello and welcome to Spindle TV. My name is Laney Shaughnessy and I'm going to be your host this evening. Hope you all are doing well. All right. Hope you're all doing well. Tonight we're going to talk inlays. We're going to talk about, we're going to create some different inlays. We're going to show drawing some inlays. We're just going to talk inlays in general. Inlays are a great way to enhance projects, whether it be cutting boards or tabletops, custom coasters, jewelry box tops, whatever the case may be, whatever the situation calls for. An inlay is a really nice way to really, bring out a nice touch in a project. And there's all kinds of methods and things. We're going to be talking about straight inlays. We're also going to be talking about Vcarve inlays. But we're going to kind of create some inlay patterns as well for ourselves, just to show, that we don't have to just kind of stick with the cookie cutter things and all. I hope everybody is doing well this evening. And yeah, just happy in general. So I want to thank everybody. We've got a whole long list here jumping in. From last week, those game files and stuff, I believe that was last week. The game files, yeah. They're all in the description of the last week videos. So Game Night 2021 Part 2, basically. All those files are in there for you guys and girls to download and play around with. I changed some things up, but you've got a lot of different games, all the designs and toolpaths and stuff that you can play around with. Can you guys hear me? Or is David Kinsey the only one that can't hear me? Let's find out, because my audio says it's audio says that y'all can hear me. And Andrew, yes, we are live. Okay, so Harvey can hear me. It's low. Someone says it's low. Let me see if I can crank up the volume a little bit. All right, let's see if I don't want to go too high, but let's see if that's a little bit better. Let me know. And we'll go from there. Okay. Now, like I said, for those of you that are just jumping in and everything, we are going to be talking inlays. And if you see me looking over to my right, I'm trying to, that's where all your comments and everything are falling. I haven't gotten a little screen yet to put in front of me so I can look at the camera and read the comments at the same time. So I have to look over to see what everything is going on and all that wonderful stuff. So hopefully, David, everybody else has got good sound. Hopefully, you'll be able to get that figured out and get back with us and everything. Okay, so we are talking inlays, right? I've done said that 3 times. So we're going to jump into the Vectric software. I'm just kind of killing time. It's 7:15 now. We'll get started. But let's go ahead and jump into the software. Now, when we're in the software, again, if you're watching on YouTube, I say this kind of each week now, but in your YouTube screen where you're watching this video, click on the little gear icon and change your settings. Sometimes it defaults to a low resolution. Select the highest resolution that's available to you, 1080p, what have you, so that when we're in the software, things are nice and clear for you when we're looking at them. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let's get over to camera 3. And let's get me out of the way. All righty. All right. Now, I want to circle back. I want to circle back a couple of weeks for those of you that are frequent watchers and you stick with me and stuff. A couple of weeks back, I forget what project it was that we were working on, and I started rambling about the golden ratio. I like kind of creating the golden ratio and everything. And then I started to try to show you how to lay out the golden ratio, and I screwed it up royally, right? Because my mind wasn't thinking. I was in the moment, and just all common sense just went out the window. So I wanted to kind of redeem myself a little bit and kind of show you a quick and easy way to determine like a golden rectangle, golden ratio, golden rectangle, you know, for your project boards and stuff. Especially if, you know, like these project boards here, I'm going to kind of work under the assumption, right, in this project that I'm going to be working with like maybe a cutting board or something along those lines, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a polyline here. And I've got a project, by the way, currently set up on the screen at 9 1/4 by 9 1/4 square. Okay, and because 9 1/4 is how wide my board is, and now I want to determine the length, and I want to kind of have that nice ratio and everything. So I'm going to take a polyline and I'm going to bring it down to the center of the box here. And I'm going to snap a line to the center, and I'm going to drag it up to the corner here and snap it. And then space bar to finish, or right click to finish it, whichever way you want to do. Now, for those of you that watched me the last time I tried this, I had started over from this corner and I went diagonal to diagonal, and it was wrong, right? So now that I have my line here, I'm going to grab my pivot point by clicking on the center of my line, and I'm going to drag that pivot point down to that corner. Perfect. And I'm going to take a guideline from here, and I'm going to snap it right to the bottom of my board. And in here, I'm going to grab this rotate handle, and I'm going to snap it right down to my line. Okay. Now, just to make sure that I'm in alignment, I might be a little off. I want to align some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this node right here. I'm in node editing now. And I'm going to hold down my shift key, select this node, and I'm going to hit the letter Y on my keyboard. And that's going to make sure that my two nodes are in perfect alignment. Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and close that polyline tool, and I'm going to drag my guideline back out of there. And now I'm going to drag a rectangle. I'm going to drag a rectangle from the corner here down to that line, and I'm going to look at my size. 14.9668 is that length, so I'm going to round that up to 15. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back into my job size, and let's make that X 15. 15 by 9 1/4, and then I can go ahead and get rid of my rectangle, get rid of my line. And I've got a nice, pleasing golden rectangle there to work with. We did it, ladies and gentlemen. So this is going to be, we're going to pretend that this is the layout for my cutting board or whatever, my sign project or what have you. I like kind of working with those pleasing rectangles and things when I'm working with square materials, signs, cutting boards, what have you, right? Okay, tabletops and all that good stuff. Picture frames. List goes on and on. All right. So, square from the center to the corner, drag that line down, and where that line ends, from the left side all the way to the end of that line, that's your overall width based on that 9 1/4 height. Or you could, take your measurement and multiply it by 1.618. 1.681. 1.618. Oh, God, I'm not even going to get into it. It's one of those numbers. 1.6 something. All right. So we've got our lines. Now, guys and girls, when it comes to inlays, when it comes to inlays, generally we're used to the traditional inlay where we have a router bit, we carve out a pocket and everything, and then out of another stock of material, a contrasting color or something, we carve out the female to that, and we fit those two together. And generally on the detail, we're kind of held hostage by the diameter of the router bit that we're using. So generally we'll go with a small diameter router bit, like 1/8 of an inch and things. Well, some patterns and designs have nice, sharp corners, or They might have some really fine detail in things. And if we were trying to do a traditional inlay with that, we wouldn't be able to get, that bit wouldn't be able to get into certain areas and everything. And we kind of lose some of that detail in those finer detail inlay type projects. So therefore, we're going to kind of work with a second method, which is the Vcarve inlay, using a V-bit, the Vcarve toolpath, and creating a male and female so that those two get together. And I'm going to be demonstrating both types of inlays for you and all, and we're going to go from there, right? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is on my cutting board, I'm most likely, I like using dark color cutting boards, you know, walnut, cherry, you know, I'm not a big fan of oak because of the open grain pour, but you know, Purple Heart, all those things, all those dark woods. And then I like to contrast them with lighter woods, you know, whether it be, generally for me, my go-to is walnut, cherry, maple for the contrasting color, or vice versa, maple with the other contrasting colors, Purple Heart and things like that, or just a whole hodgepodge of different things. So I'm going to visually pretend that I'm working with a walnut board for my main board here, and I'm going to start laying out some detail. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a rectangle tool, and I'm going to snap, bring my mouse, I've got my smart snapping and geometry snapping on up here, and I'm going to bring my mouse to the corner and snap to that corner, hold down my left mouse button and drag a rectangle out to this corner here. Nice. And then I'm going to take that rectangle and I want to offset it inward. Now I want, what I'd like is around the outer trim, basically, or outer rim of my cutting board, I'd like to be in probably about maybe 3/4 of an inch. And then I'd like to have a band, a nice band of a contrasting color. And in that band, I'll even throw the juice groove in there and stuff in the middle of that band. I want to, you know, have that nice contrasting color kind of outer rim. Or I may have the band and then do the juice groove somewhere different. It all just depends. But let's assume that we're going to kind of create our band now for our inlay. So I'm going to use the offset tool and I'm going to come inward 3/4 of an inch. Okay, I'm not going to create sharp corners on this. I'm going to let it go ahead and actually I'm going to create sharp corners because I'm going to put my own radiuses in there. That way I know they're what I want. We're going to go ahead and delete the original and offset that rectangle inward. Now my band that I'd like to have around, I'd like that to be probably just a nice little detail band. So maybe 3/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/2 inch. I got to think about that because if I'm using my juice grooving bit, which for me is a 3/8 inch diameter box core cutting bit, then I want my band to be, you know, bigger and all. So thinking about that juice groove going through, because I'm not cutting the full 3/8 inch diameter, I'm cutting a very shallow juice groove. I'm going to have my band, let's go with 1/2 inch. So I'm going to offset inward another 1/2 inch on that selected rectangle there. And I don't want to delete the original on this one. And I'm going to create that. Okay. Now, thinking about this, you know, on my juice groove and all, before, let's go back. Let's Control Z. Let's create our radiuses before we offset in the next go around. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go back into my rectangle tool. Let's put the radiuses in. I'm going to have an internal or external radius. And I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 inch box core bit, right? So at least, I mean, at a minimum, 3/16 would be my radius and all. But I want to kind of, I want a nice, you know, I want to kind of give it a little bit of definition. So I'm going to go actually with the full 3/8. So 0.375. Let's put a decimal in there. And let's apply that. There we go. And now I'm going to take that and offset that inward by my 1/2 inch. Okay, so let's offset that inward by the 1/2 inch. And first of all, undo that. Turn off sharp corners. I don't want sharp corners this time. And still going to give me sharp corners for the most part. And I'd like them to have a bit of a radius too. Let me see here. Yeah, I'd like that to have a bit of a radius too. So let's go in and into that rectangle tool on this. And let's see if I can pull that in. This time I'm going to go half. Let's bring it down to 1/4. 0.1875. Okay. And just create that little bit of a radius there. It'll work. All right. So now that I have my band, I'm going to do a traditional inlay for this because I want it to be kind of deep. I want it to be kind of thick because I am going to kind of throw a juice groove in here. You know, it all depends on your style. You might not want your juice groove running right through your inlay or what have you. I'm going to kind of have it put in. So I want to make sure that, you know, however deep I'm going to do my juice groove, that I want, you know, I don't want to cut down into the walnut, right? I don't want to cut through the inlay and then see the walnut exposed or expose my glue gap or anything like that, right? So I'm going to, on these two here, I'm going to do a pocket cut. And again, not a pocket cut. What am I talking about? I'm going to do an inlay, pocket, inlay, pocket. And thinking about my depth of cut, I'm going to go probably on my my board is 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to go kind of stuck on the number 3/8 tonight. So I'm going to go 3/8 deep. I am going to use a 1/4 inch end mill to cut this pocket. So I'm going to make sure that I use a 1/4 inch end mill to do the mill as well. So let's get rid of the 1/8 inch and come in and select our quarter. Okay. And I'm going to do it as an offset. It's fine because I'm just cleaning out that pocket. There's no need for me to cut with the grain or anything like that. So I'm going to do it as an offset. Currently, I'm taking a 1/16 of an inch per pass. I'm going to go ahead and reduce that down to an 1/8 of an inch per pass. I'll do it in 3 passes, you know, and stuff. And this is going to be our pocket inlay. 0.25 in the mill, end mill, and I'm going to calculate that, and I'm going to create that pocket area. Okay, wonderful. So I have that pocket area. Now, if we go back and look at the 2D view, if I select this pocket toolpath here and I go into and toggle from wireframe to solid view, we can see that my 1/4 inch end mill is going to get all over that. You know, it's going to be able to get everywhere. There's no rounding or anything. If my corners were sharp or anything, and I end up with a radius, my mill inlay will accommodate for that, and it'll cut the radius for the mill part too. That's the one great thing about using the inlay toolpath when you're doing a traditional outlet, but I have no worries here. So the one thing that I want to make sure of is that I create my mill inlay on the same vectors. And I'm going to be cutting them out of at least a 3/8 inch piece of material. Well, not 3/8, sorry, at least a 1/2 inch thick piece of material, because I want it to be proud, right? When it gets glued in, I want it to be proud. and then I'll end up surfacing that off with the CNC. Some people, you know, you can even run it through if you have a drum sander, or you can hand sand it down. There's all kinds of ways to do that. Some people, hell, they'll break out the hand plane and plane it down and stuff. But I'm going to be clamping the board back on the CNC and running a kind of a surfacing toolpath to level that down to the surface, leaving just a few thousandths of an inch exposed that I'll be able to clean up with some final hand sanding during the finishing. So in my mill inlay, I'm going to go ahead and select these. Let's turn off this toolpath here. I'm going to select these same two vectors, and I'm going to create my straight mill inlay, my insert. And this is going to be cutting all the way through the material that I'm going to be using. So it's going to be cutting a 1/2 inch. And I want to make sure that I use the same 1/4 inch end mill for the tool. And I want to be cutting on the outside of the line. Now the software is pretty smart. It knows that I have an inside vector here, so it'll also cut on the inside of the line for that inside vector, and it'll do the inside cut first before the outside cut. So this is going to be my mill inlay, and it's going to be a 0.25 EM end mill, and we'll go ahead and calculate that. And let's reset that preview, and you know, of course, you'll see the inside cut happen first, and then it's going to go do the outside cut. So the software is pretty smart that way. It knows that, hey, I've got an inside vector and an outside vector that I'm going to be cutting on both sides. So it'll reverse it, but it'll also do the inside one first, because we don't want to cut the outside one first and then our board be moving around trying to cut that inside one. So imagine if this was a 1/2 inch piece of material, this would be my inlaid part that I would come over and fit in. Now, here's the thing. Right now, both my pocket and my female, or my pocket and my mill, they have the same size. There's no offset allowance, right? And so what we want to do is always cut the mill part first. I always cut the mill part first. I always recommend that individuals cut the mill part first, because when we're doing the pocket inlay, we actually are going to create an allowance. We're going to create an offset allowance to have that pocket cut just a little bit over size, so that the two parts will fit together and I don't have to freaking try to beat them together or anything crazy like that. But I don't want too big of an allowance. I don't want it sloppy. I want a nice fit, leave enough room for just a little bit of glue and all that stuff. So my allowance, I always start off with, it's going to be a negative number, okay? My pocket allowance, because I'm going to be carving past the lines, and so I'm going to be, you know, doing an allowance past the line, so it's always a negative number. And for me, it is a 0.002. So I'll start at 0.002, and I'll do my first initial pocket cut. When it's finished, I'll move the router out of the way and I'll do a test fit. And usually I'm pretty right on with that. The two parts, I can press them together, they'll be great. But if not, then I can come back into the toolpath and I can adjust that offset allowance and run it again and just open it up a little bit more and sneak up on that perfect fit. Okay, we want to sneak up on that perfect fit. So I'm going to go 0.002 and I'm going to recalculate that female. And notice that I put it in the bottom of the list, or the second of the list, because I want to cut it second. That way I have my mill to do my test fitting with, and I can sneak up on that. Okay? All right. And so, thanks everybody for the thumbs up. Thanks everybody for jumping in. Yeah, definitely hit that thumbs up if you like this kind of stuff. Now, all right. So we've got our mill here and everything. And now what I need to do is I need to create my center line where my juice groove is going to cut, right? I need to create my center line where my juice groove vector is going to be. So I'm going to take my outside vector here and I'm going to offset it inward by 1/4 inch, right? Because my band is a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go 0.25 and I'm going to offset that inward to get that center line. And the one thing that I've got to be mindful of is that, it might have a weird look here in the corner. I might have to compensate for on these radii, right? I might have to compensate for this. And basically this is a 3/16 inch radius. This is a 3/8. I'd split the middle for the center. So I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to go to my fillet tool, and if you notice, I can come over here and turn those fillets off, right, on those corners. I can check all 4 of those corners and turn them off. And, you know, so if I had my 3/8, 0.375, that was my initial radius. I'm going to divide that by 3, and that'll give me 1/8 of an inch. Let me think if I'm doing this right. Let me think if I'm doing this right. One, 2, 3. Yeah, it should cut. It should cut in there. I might have to come back and put a 3/8 inch radius in there. We'll find out from the cut. I think I did that right in my head. It sounds right, but it's all going to come down to the way it looks. It doesn't look like it's the proper radius. I wanted to kind of come more arching here, so I don't think that's right. Let's undo that. Let's undo that, and let's go back in there. Let's go 3/16, 0.1875, and let me just look visually, because that it doesn't. Oops, that's the offset. Let's go to the fillet tool. 0.1875. It visually did not look right for me. Yeah, see, that's I had that weird nub. I don't know. We'll go with that. We'll see what that looks like. So that's a 3/8 inch radius. Let's give that a go and see how that looks in the final detail, right? It's all going to come down to aesthetics and what makes it pleasing to the eye, to you. To me, I think I'm going to have this little nub out here, this heavy area right there, and it's going to throw me off in my mind. But who knows, right? All right, so let's go ahead and create a profile toolpath on that, and I'm going to cut down 1/8 of an inch. I'll probably end up going a little more than 1/8. Yeah, let's go 3/16. And I'm going to use my 3/8 inch diameter box core bit. And I want to be on the line. So I'm going to select that on the line. And this is going to be my juice groove. And of course that'll get cut after the inlay is done and all that stuff. BCB, box core bit. All right, let's yeah, that's that nub I was talking about. So I have a nice even pattern here, but I have a little bit of a nub right there and right there where it's not even, you know, but I don't think I'm going to sweat that. If that bothers me too much, then I'll come in and change the radius on these outside. I'll drag them in a little bit. And that's the great thing about the new rectangle tool in version 10.5 is I can grab one of these green nodes in that rectangle tool and I can pull that in, and it'll do all 4 corners at the same time, right? If I want to pull that in a little bit, and you know, so That to me looks good. So I've got to recalculate my pocket inlay and my mail inlay. So as a matter of fact, let me do that. We'll do them both together. Recalculate the visible toolpaths. Okay. And so if I reset the preview and I just look at the mail inlay and the juice groove, preview those two visible toolpaths, I'll kind of be able to get a visual idea on what I was doing. But I like the new rectangle tool, being able to grab those nodes when I'm in the rectangle tool in a corner, and I can adjust that radius freehand because it takes a lot of the guesswork out. Okay, what's my radius supposed to be? What's my decimal supposed to be? What's this? What's that? And everything, and I can kind of adjust it freehand and all. And so, you know, imagining the juice groove here, I'm going to be okay with this here and everything with that inlay. Now, my juice groove is kind of, it doesn't necessarily need to be that deep. I mean, I'm not freaking, I'm not going to say it online, but I'm not butchering something. I'm just cutting some juicy watermelons and tomatoes and stuff and all that stuff. So I might on my juice groove, I might back that off some. And then we'll get into the more creative inlays in the middle. All right, let's reset that preview one last time. Look at those two toolpaths and preview them. And I think I'm going to go with, it's going to be kind of it's between 3/16 and an eighth, you know, and I'll probably go 0.16 and some change. No, I'm actually going to go with that. So that'll be fine for a juice groove. And you got to imagine, you got to use your imagination, right? You got to use your imagination that there's a juice groove there, right? All right. Or that there's an inlay there and it's not a big old gap in the board like you see there. All right. Let's go ahead and reset that. Let's get back to our 2D view. Now we're going to have some fun with the center. Now with the center, we're gonna, you know, maybe it might be a person's name or a family name, right? We could lay some text. It could be a design, you know, or a logo, whatever the case may be. We're gonna work with all of those tonight, and so let's go ahead and let's take a look at. I've got a layer here called Lotus, and Lotus flowers are, you know, they're fairly popular, and I've got two different style designs here that might be a nice looking inlay in the center of this and everything. And so we'll start off with the Lotus, and let's get it centered on our board. Let's open up our alignment tool, and under align to material, we're gonna select that Lotus first, all of it, and align it to the center. And then I'm going to size it up. About like that. And, you know, once again, you know, this is going to be an inlays, but it's not going to be the inlay toolpath. We're going to use the Vcarve toolpath because I've got these nice sharp points and everything in here that I want to kind of keep. I want to keep that detail, and my V-bit's going to be able to get in there you know, better than most. Now, doesn't matter if you use, you know, a 1/4 inch V-bit, sorry, a 60-degree V-bit or a 90-degree V-bit, 22, just use the same V-bit for both the male and female, and depending on the design is going to depend on, you know, how narrow of a V-bit you're going to use. For something like this, I always work with a 60-degree V-bit, and on my 60-degree V-bit, it's got a 1/4 inch 60-degree V-bit, the white side 1541 to be specific. It has a cutting length, the cutter on it, of 0.21. So generally for my inlay depth and everything, I want to stay underneath that. Okay, so 0.2 is kind of what I work with and all. So here's the magic when you're working with a Vcarve inlay. So we're going to create our female here. But we're also going to come in and I'm going to draw a boundary around this female. You know, something about like that. And I'm going to take this boundary in this Lotus and I'm going to copy it to another layer, a new layer. And I'm going to call this my male Vcarve Inlay. And we'll give it a kind of a red color. And I'm going to turn off all my other layers that I currently have on. And I just want that male inlay on here. That's the only one I want. I want it to be highlighted in bold. Make sure the layer you're working in is active. And what I want to do is I want to mirror this. I want to completely flip it horizontally. So I want to mirror my border that I drew around that Lotus and the Lotus flower itself. And I want to not create a mirror copy, but I do want to flip it about the job center because it is centered. And I want to flip it horizontally. Okay. And notice, you know, my rectangle wasn't quite centered, right? So it's kind of, my rectangle's off. But that's just my border. I'm not worried about that. Because that's just giving me an area for when I do the clearing Vcarve and everything. So I'm going to flip this horizontally. There we go. And that is what I'll create my mel toolpath on, my mel Vcarve. All right, let's go ahead and turn that off for a minute. Let's go back into our original layer. And for this Vcarve inlay, we're going to select just the inlay on this. We don't need this border here. That border is just for the mel, and it's already on that layer. Let's make sure that our layer 1 is active. There we go. And it's going to be a Vcarve toolpath. And I want a 0 start depth for the female. 0 start depth, and I'm going to cut down to 0.2. My cut depth cannot exceed my cutter height. Like some V-bits, 90-degree V-bit with a 1/2 inch head, you know, once you get past, I think it's like 0.25 or something, then it starts to straighten out, right? We don't want that. We want to be on the V cut. So your depth of cut is going to be based kind of on your bit. And in my case, my flat depth is going to be 0.2. Okay. I'm going to be using my 60-degree V-bit. Let's make sure that is the one that I have chosen. And I'm going to give this a name. This is going to be my female Vcarve Inlay. And it's going to be a 60 DEG V bit. Okay, gonna kind of, it helps to kind of name your toolpaths before you calculate. That way, when you're saving them, you know, they're already named for you, right? And stuff. And so we'll have this cut come in, and it's going to flatten that area out at that point too, with that Lotus. And you know, imagine if you will, visually, walnut board with a, you know, kind of a tan little Lotus flower in there. And of course it would be an actual inlay, right? It wouldn't be a pocket like that, but you got to use your imagination when we're kind of doing these things. We'd have a, you know, it's a pretty nice, and then our, you know, our female pocket would be coming around that. And that cut would also have that kind of maple inlay in there, and there'd be a juice groove and all. So this would be kind of our initial basic, just getting started cutting board. Okay, so all right, for our inlay. Okay, now that we've got the female calculated, let's go ahead and turn off those layers and go back to our male layer here. And on our male layer, we're going to create the same Vcarve toolpath, but this is the magic of it all. We want a large start depth in this one, and we want a small flat depth. We want the start depth and the flat depth to total when we add them together, they need to total the 0.2 cut depth of my female, but it could be any combination. I could go 0.1 start depth, 0.1 flat depth. You know, I could go 0.15 start depth, 0.05 flat depth, that kind of thing. Now the flat depth, imagine that flat depth and everything being your glue gap. When those two parts go and fit together, there's going to be a glue gap and all in there. And those parts can only, because they're triangular shaped, they can only go down so far in one another. We don't want a big glue gap, right? Especially if we're doing inlay over inlay over inlay. And what I mean was, let's say if I was inlaying this whole square out as a cherry, you know, cherry inlay or something, or purple heart or whatever the case may be. And then I'm going to do the lotus flower inside of that. So I have three kind of different colors going on here. We don't want it when we do that big inlay. We don't want our next inlay to cut through into the glue gap and expose that, and we have big old holes and voids and crazy stuff. So the smaller the flat depth, the better, but we do need some flat depth. So my start depth on here for me is going to be 0.18, and my flat depth is going to be 0.02. I don't go any less than 0.02, 20,000ths of an inch for the glue gap, but it could be 17.03, 16.04, 15.03, you know, that kind of thing. It could be 1 and 1, whatever the case may be, but your start depth is always going to be larger than your flat depth, either equal to or larger than your flat depth. And you want a small flat depth, small as possible, so we minimize our glue gap. Okay? All right. Okay, hopefully that'll make sense. Now, Harvey, Matthias, are you guys talking with each other as far as makerspaces? Or are you asking me what makerspace I belong to? Because I don't belong to a makerspace. I belong to all of you. Belong to Spindle TV. But, all right, so on here, this is going to be our male inlay, Vcarve inlay. Let's get it identified. Vcarve inlay. And again, it's going to be the 60-degree V-bit. And we're going to calculate that. Now, on this one, what's going to happen is on our contrasting material, we're going to have, you know, a block, small block or something laid out. And we're going to carve that mill. Now notice in my flat depth, I didn't put an end mill, right? Because I'm not doing raised text or anything. I don't care what the flat depth looks like as far as that goes. You know, I'm just going to let the V-bit do it all because it's a fairly small inlay. If it was really big or something and all that, then I would probably use an end mill to do the flat area clearance. And everything, and then come back and do the V-carve, so that way my little point of my V-bit's not trying to do all the work. This is a pretty decent size. Let me see what size it is, and that's going to determine what... So yeah, it's about 6 by 6. So let's look at the time here. Yeah, I'm definitely going to add a flat area clearance tool to that. It was about an hour long. Lord have mercy. Let's go back in there, and let's choose... let's choose an 1/8 inch end mill. 1/8 or 1/4, don't matter. 1/8 will get into more spots. And so I'm going to have that end mill do the flat work. And then the V-carve will come in and do around the edges and everything. You know. Now, the piece that I'd be carving this out of is then either going to be taken to table saw, bandsaw, handsaw, whatever, and these edges are going to get cut away. Okay, so let's simulate that. We'll pretend simulate that. Let's offset this rectangle inward. Let's go a little bit more than that. Notice how everything popped up here. when I created that inlay, I didn't have the male layer selected. Have your layer selected. I've said that once and I still didn't follow my own advice. Let's go 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and I'm going to just simulate a profile toolpath. The profile toolpath is not part of this design. Let's go on the line is fine. Let's cut all the way through for visualization. And let's cut that out. Oh, don't do that. Hold on, let me back it off because I cut off my tip there, man. Bear with me a second here. Let's first of all change it to a 1/4 inch end mill and it won't cut off the tip, Laney. Let's go 1/4 inch end mill. And let's recalculate that. Reset the preview and preview those two again. And so those edges are going to get cut off because I want a nice flat backer with my mill raised up. And I'm going to take that over and we've mirrored it, right? We mirrored that part. So now I've got my mill, I've got my female here, going to put some glue in there, a little on the mill as well. And I'm going to, like a sandwich, I'm going to put those two pieces together and clamp them together. And so our mill part, we just want our mill part that's going to just press down in there, put some, in most cases, you don't need a whole lot of clamping pressure, but put some clamping pressure on it. Really get that seated down in there because suction and stuff, if you just kind of sit there and maybe put weights on it, there's an air pocket along with glue, right, and stuff. And so when you're pushing that inlay down, it can actually rise, right? If you don't have enough pressure, it can rise like buoyancy, on that air and liquid and everything in there. So clamp it down and force it in there. You'll get a little glue squeeze out and that's fine. But, we want these two. Now with this, there is no offset allowance. With this cut, there's no offset allowance, okay? So you have your female Vcarve, you mirror it, put a boundary around it. You have your male, and your male is going to be that raised part that'll fit into that carved part. And you'll have that, that nice inlay. Okay? All right. And so now for me, my numbers, my 0.18 and my 0.2 for my 60-degree V-bit, it's my go-to number. So every inlay that I do, it's rinse and repeat. The only thing that changes is the design, right? So let's come in here and turn off the mill and go back into layer 1. I'm going to turn my Lotus back on. And, imagine, if you will, if we had this pattern in here, and let's get it centered, aligned to material center, and a nice pretty inlay. Let's size it up just a little bit, and hell, we might want to rotate it, depending on which direction you want to go. I don't like that because I don't like these three things. That's kind of my divider line, so I want to go back. I'm hitting the number 9 and 0 to do that rotation and all. But this would be the same way. We would do our Vcarve. This would be a 0 start depth, 0.2 cut depth, 60-degree V-bit, and we would calculate that toolpath. To kind of create that pattern in there. And then we would draw a boundary around it, whatever that boundary would be. And of course, when you're drawing, make sure the layer that you're working in is the active layer. I'm going to keep saying it until I start listening to myself, right? Right. All right, and then I'm going to take these two guys here, guys and girls, whatever, and I'm going to copy them to copy them to a new layer, and this will be my, I'll just call it inlay 2 for right now. To female. Vcarve Inlay to mill. That's going to be my mill that on that layer that I'm creating. And once again, we would turn off all of our layers. And in here, in our other layer, we would take this object and we would mirror it, flip it horizontally. Again, my rectangle wasn't centered because I freehand drew it, but still it doesn't matter. And then we would create our mill cut, and again, the mill cut would be a 0.18. And my numbers work for me. They might not work for you, you know, kind of thing. Play with it, see what you like best. You might want a little bit more glue gap, whatever the case may be. But 1/8 inch end mill is going to do the pocket work. And so we would create that visible toolpath, and that we would create that mill, right? All right. And so male fits into female, you're done. Now, let's have a little fun and let's draw some patterns, right? I'm going to teach you guys, you know, now we know that, you know, how to create the inlays, right? Whether it be our regular standard pocket inlay and female inlay using the inlay toolpath, or a Vcarve inlay. We have our original. We take our copy of that and mirror it, have a boundary around it. That becomes our male. Our original is our female. And you want a larger start depth with a smaller flat depth on that male cut. And on your female cut, just make sure the cut does not exceed the cutting depth of your V-bit, of the V point, not the little straight edges on it if you have a 90 degree with a 1/2 inch head or something like that. Okay? All right. Joseph Finley says, how do you keep from breaking smaller bits with such a deep start depth? The 60 degree V-bit is not a smaller bit, and it will not break, because that's my starting depth, so it's cutting in that V, and it's a pretty stout little bit. I've never had a bit break yet on it. It's going to come in and it's going to V-carve and clear away. And it may take, you know, it's not going to take passes. It won't take passes because the pass depth is 0.2. But that bit, its normal start depth or normal pass depth, if we look at the 60 degree V-bit in the tool database, its pass depth is 0.2, and I'm only going 0.18, right? So there's not a lot going on. And as far as the 1/8 inch end mill, if that's what you're referring to, the 1/8 inch end mill, the 1/8 inch end mill is, I can take, you know, an 1/8 of an inch, 0.125, going 0.18, not going to hurt it at the speeds and stuff that I'm flying. If you find that you're, you know, if you find that you're taking and breaking bits or something, then, you know, make your changes accordingly. You can do the clearing cut as a pocket cut if you wanted to. Just be careful that you don't, you know, cut into your vectors too much, right? Or anything like that. But I've never had a bit break yet with these numbers. So I don't know if that's a viable explanation, but it's not that aggressive of a cut. Okay. I could with my 1/8 inch end mill, I could probably go, if I wanted to go really aggressive with it, I could go 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch per pass with it, you know. So but I wouldn't do that. I always go half the diameter of the bit or less. And in my case, I'm going the full diameter, the 1/8, plus a little bit more. So it's not going to hurt it. But if you find that you're breaking bits, then you can come in and do a pocket toolpath, right? Just to show you. We can do a pocket toolpath, cutting down to our depth of 0.2, because that's the total depth. 0.18 plus 0.02, 0.2. You can, with your 1/8 inch end mill, But on this, we're going to have a kind of a no pocket allowance. We're going to come in and calculate. And what'll occur is that'll take passes now, little passes to clear that out. Okay. And then I could come back with my Vcarve cut and preview that visible toolpath and clear it away that way, right? So if I'm worried about my first cut coming in and cutting too much, then I could come back and do this. Okay. All right. Let's now create some designs. Let's create some Vcarves designs. So let's create a new layer. Let's turn this layer off. And you're going to kind of get a lesson here in just kind of some custom layout. We're going to use guidelines and stuff to help us out and all that wonderful jazz and everything. Yeah, don't forget to save. Yes, save early, save often, guys and girls. This is just playing around. There's, not an actual project and all, but let's go ahead and be fair. We'll save this. And let's go to Documents, CNC Jobs, create a new folder. Call this our Inlay class. And I don't know why I always type in a capital N, Inlay class. And let's test inlay designs, because I'm going to create some designs for you, some cutting boards designs and stuff that I'll share with you guys and girls, but it won't be, it might be some of the patterns we use, but it won't be this file. I'll start it from scratch and create a nice clean file for y'all. All right, let's go ahead and lay out some lines and things, some guidelines. I'm going to drag a guideline right here. And something you may not know about guidelines, I try to teach you guys a little tip or trick each day, is, we can drag and move guidelines from one place to another and everything. But if we hold our control key down, we can drag copies of our guidelines out, right? So if you need to make multiple guidelines and all that wonderful jazz. Now I'm going to get rid of these because I'm not quite ready for them yet. And I'm going to use the actual tool, right click on the guideline, and I'm going to create a relative guide 1 inch apart. It doesn't matter in what direction. And then I'm going to close that because I should have hit. Always, if you're going to create multiple guidelines, make sure that you have select new guide. That way it selects a new guide and you can just keep offsetting and stuff. And now I'm going to create a guideline that's 3/4. And then another guideline that is 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And on this one here, I'm going to go back to it. And now I'm going to go negative in the negative direction. I'm going to go negative 0.75. And make sure I've got make sure that's relative, negative 0.75, and select new guide. And I'm going to create that. I'm going to create another one that is at negative 1 inch from that new one. And then another 0.75. And then another 1/8. All negative. Oop, too many decimals. Okay, so let's close that, and I've got these guidelines out here. Now, these guidelines, basically, they're going to help me with drawing my rectangles. My 2 1-inch spacing rectangle, or there is going to be my 2 rectangles here. All right, and so I'm going to make sure when you're drawing, ladies and gentlemen, that you're working on the active layer. Lord have mercy. Let's make sure that layer is active. Turn off all those other layers. All right, let's do that one more time. And I want square corners on these rectangles. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go... I'll go 5.5. So I've got one here. Let's go ahead and while I'm working on it, before I make any copies or anything like that, I'm going to go into node editing mode on this rectangle, and I'm going to turn this into an arc to arc that end. Over here, I'm going to arc this end. Yay. Yay for that. And then I'm going to offset this selected rectangle. And let's turn off the guide so you can see what's happening here. I'll just turn them on when we need them. I'm going to offset that inward by 1/4 inch. Okay, cool. All right. And let's go ahead and turn our guidelines back on. This little corner thing turns our guidelines on and off. Turn our guideline back on, and I'm going to select these two vectors here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to align them up and down. Up and down. I'll line it up and down on our board. And then while they're selected, I'm going to double click on them in transform mode, and I'm going to drag, hold down my control key, and I'm going to drag a copy over to this other 1 inch spacing, right? Okie dokie. Nice. All right. Let's go ahead and now that we have that, okay, you can kind of see how I use the guidelines to create that, that spacing and everything in there. We're going to select this, and we're going to center these two objects on the board. Let's get them centered, right? And then I'm going to rotate them. Let's close this tool. I'm going to hit the number 9 on my keyboard and rotate them 45 degrees. Cool? Cool. All right, let's go ahead and open up the mirror tool. And on the mirror tool, I want to create a mirror copy. I want to flip it about the job center, and I want to flip it horizontally. Okay. Y'all with me so far? And, you know, what I want to do is I want to fatten up my line. So let's undo that, come back here, and I want to kind of widen out my shape a little bit. Let's go in my size tool here. Let's go 3 and 3. 3 and 3. Oh no. That was terrible. Let's see if we can, I wonder if I can do this without squishing my, yeah, my radiuses get squished too much. All right. I backed up. Control Z. I backed up. I want to change my size a little bit on this rectangle. Let's go 3 inches. Let's go 4. 4 inches on the height. Let's go back into node editing. Node editing, Laney. And turn this back to an arc. Turn that back to an arc. Okay. And let's offset that inward the 1/4 inch, so we're kind of back where we were. And then what we're going to do is, on my spacing, I'm going to Control C, Control V. I'm going to make a copy and paste, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it relative on the x-axis, basically a certain distance. And I'm going to go 3.5 inches. No. Let's go 2.5. No. Bear with me. Not far enough. I think 1 inch is going to be the number. One. It's either going to be 1 or 1 1/4. That's not far enough. Need a little bit of space. Let's go 1.5. Okay, great. And that looks good. Let's get that centered on the board. Let's rotate it 90 degrees or 45 degrees. And then in our mirror tool, everything that we just did a moment ago, let's flip it horizontally. Much better. I like the way that looks much better. All right. So on here, I'm going to make sure that my whole object should be centered on my board. If I align it to the material, it should be centered. Everything should be centered and all. And now we're going to create our inlay from that. Okay. Bear with me a second here. Always split the depth on the male because it cuts the full depth because of 1/4, 1/8, 16th full. Alexander's answering each other. Should be offered. Don't need to offset when you V-carve. The start depth to fin. Always a piece. Okay. You guys are kind of talking with yourselves. Great. All right. So what I want to do here is we're going to do a little bit of node editing and line drawing and all that wonderful jazz. But I'm going to use a guideline to help me out. Let's take these guidelines and we're going to go to View, Guidelines, and Delete. All guides. And I'm going to take and grab one guideline here. And if I right click on this guideline, I can rotate it 45 degrees on the angle. Okay. Oh, you son of a gun. Don't hit the apply button, not the delete button, you know, when you do that. So 45, and we're going to click apply. All right. And I'm going to drag that here to this edge right here. And now I'm going to hold my control key down and I'm going to drag another guideline and snap it to this edge. Hold that control key down, another guideline, snap it to this edge, this inside edge, this inside edge. So all my edges here, same thing here, this edge, and this edge. Okay. And now I'm going to take my guidelines and kind of move them. I'm just going to, from here, I'm going to create equal distance spacing. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to create relative guides to where they are. So we're starting with this first one here, this first guide, and let's close this out. Let's close this out for a minute. Let's close this here so we can see everything. And so I'm starting with this guideline here. Excuse me. And I'm going to create a relative guide to its left. So that's a negative number. And I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch away. Okay, there. And close that. Once I do that, then I can kind of get rid of this guide right here. Just drag it back up into the ruler. So I've got my 1/8 inch guide there. This one here, I'm going to create a relative guide going to the right. So it's a positive number. And I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch. And now I can get rid of that guide. I could just hit the delete while I'm in that tool. I'll show you what I mean. This guide here, I'm going to create going to the left, a negative number. And I'm going to click create. And then I'm going to hit delete guide, right? So it'll... of course, let's make sure we go in the correct direction. So I want to go negative 1/8 of an inch, create the guide, and then delete. There we go. This one here, it's going to be a positive. And create that guide and delete the one that I started with. And I'm going to do that for all of these coming through. So let's one more. Let's keep going to the left. Create the guide. Delete the original. to the right, positive number. Create the guide, delete the original. To the left. Create the guide, delete the original. And to the right. Create that guide and delete the original. Okay, so I've got some guidelines to help me lay out. Now, I also want to bring a guideline over, and this is going to get really, let's deselect our design so you can see it a little better. And let's change the color of that layer to really make it visible over the guidelines. Let's change that color to black so that you guys and girls can see that, you know, better on the screen. But on this guideline, this time I want to rotate 45 in the other direction. Now there's no negative 45, right? You know, I need to go 135 degrees. Click apply. And close. And then I'm going to drag that guideline and snap it to the center for a minute. All right. So now I'm going to take this guideline and snap it to this line here. And I'm going to do the same thing for these guides. And you'll see in a moment how I use guidelines and stuff to help me out here. So I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm just freehand dragging the guidelines out where I need them. And I'm snapping them to the lines, you know. And if a guideline misses its mark, get it and, you know, find a snapping point on that line. Get it right on that line, okay? Let's drag this one over here. Let's hold down that control key, snap to the areas that we want to snap to, snap, and snap. Okay. Now, just like I did the other guidelines, I'm going to create, delete, create, delete, create, delete. Okay. And this guideline right here needs to get deleted. Delete. Okay. All right. So this time I'm still moving to the right here. So on this guideline, it is going to be a relative direction to the right at that 135 degrees. I'm going to create that guide. And, whoop, where did it go? Hold on a second. I went, make sure it's a relative distance. Let's try that again. Relative 1/8 of an inch. Let me see where that guide went to then. It disappeared somewhere. Let me snap this to a spot. Let me hold down the control key because I lost this guide. Okay. All right, one more time. Relative positive 1/8 of an inch. Create guide. There we go. And delete original. I don't know what happened that other time, but relative, we're going to the left this time. It's going to be a negative number at 135 degrees. Create that guide and delete that original. All right, we're working on every leg of this oval. Every leg of this oval. So positive. Okay, and create guide and delete original. And this one is off a little bit. I want everything to be consistent, so let me snap this bad boy to a point. There we go, snapping point. All right, let's select on it. This one's going to go to the left. Negative 0.125, create the guide, delete the original. Okay. Now, if you didn't want to keep going back and forth between the negative and positive, let me snap this one on its spot here. Oh. Find the snapping point on your vector. There you go. If you don't want to keep going negative, positive, do all the positives first or all the negatives first, since that's already negative. I could come over here and go, okay, create guide, delete. On this one, right click, create guide, delete. And then over here on this one, I could just take away that minus sign, create guide, delete, and go to the other one. Right here. Create guide, delete. Okay. All right, so now I have all my guides laid out. Woo, doggy, what is all that? And what this is going to do is this is going to help me create my parts. Now notice when I hit delete on one of the things, I had my other vectors selected and they disappeared, right? So I need to re-mirror those. Let's flip them horizontally and create that mirror copy because they disappeared on me, right? Now these guidelines are going to help me draw my lines and everything. Okay, you guys with me so far? Yeah, you can do angle guidelines. You can do all kinds of things. You can drag, hold your control key down and pull copies of guidelines. All that wonderful jazz. All right, so I got all these guidelines here, and they're going to kind of help me create my pattern, if you will. And so the let's start over here in this corner. All right, I'm going to use a line tool. Actually, I'm going to use a rectangle tool. Bear with me a second. I see patterns. Yeah, I'm going to use my rectangle tool here. My measurement distance is going to be the same no matter which way I'm going, but from here, from this intersection to this intersection here, is a distance of 2 1/4, right? And everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle that is 2 1/4 by 2 1/4. So let's go 2.25 by 2.25 and click apply. On that rectangle, I'm going to snap it to the center of my board here, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, so that got me on that guideline. Bear with me a second here. I missed my whole guideline. I want to go up to this one. I'm going to hold my shift key down and size that up to there. Okay, cool. Had me wondering. I was like, where? It must have been 3 1/4. Did I say it just completely backwards? All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this rectangle on another layer with a different color so you can see the contrasting colors. So I'm going to take the rectangle that I have just drew. Let's turn off the vectors here for a minute. And I'm going to move it to a new layer. And I'm going to paint that layer bright red. No, that's not bright red. Can I get brighter than that? Can you guys see that contrasting color? Hopefully you can. Let me know. Okay. And let me turn my guidelines back on because what I want to do now is on my rectangle, I'm going to hold down my control and shift key to keep it centered. Okay. Keep my rectangle centered. And I'm going to grab it in the corner here and I'm going to drag it down to this intersection of guidelines. Okay, and then I'm going to, don't do that. That was a move. We don't want to move. Control Z. I missed my mark. Okay, let's turn off that. Nice, so I got this. That'll be great. That comes in to here. All right, let's create another couple of rectangles. This will make sense in just a moment. I'm using shapes to kind of create shapes. And what I want to do is on my guidelines, here, I'm going to turn off the drawing so I can see my guidelines much better, right? All except for this, my rectangles that I'm drawing and working with. I turned off the other layer, the other design. And what I want is everywhere there is an intersection, I want a rectangle. So I'm going to hold my Control and Shift and drag down to this intersection. And I keep moving, Control Z. Control and Shift down to this intersection. And I should have a rectangle on each intersection all the way around. Excellent. Once I have that, making sure and validating that I have that, I'm good there. I have these shapes here. I can now turn on my other layer on my shapes, and I can start doing some trimming. Okay, you guys and girls still with me? Y'all awake? Here we go. All right. Okay, so here we go. We're going to take our trim tool, our scissor tool here, and we're going to start. Let's start up here, and I'm going to trim this line here, here, and here. Okay, this shape here is going to come all the way around, and it's going to stop right in here. And what I'd like is, let me turn my guidelines on and see if I have a guide there. See how I have a line here, right? There's a guideline there showing me where I need to draw a line. So I will come back. I'll trim it out. Let's turn those guides off. I'll trim it out as much as I can with my lines here. But then I'll turn my guidelines on and come back and draw my polylines in where they need to be. But this shape is going to come to here. And it's going to stop right about here. Okay? And then this shape, let's get rid of this line here. This one's going to come all the way around, right? And it's going to clear this path, and it's going to stop somewhere in here. This one, I'm going to trim away these lines and that line. This one's going to come around, and this one's actually going to go all the way through, okay? And it's going to come through this one. Remember, this one's going to get cut off. Right now it's intersecting in. We can't have intersecting lines. But it's going to come through. It's going to come through down to here. And then it's going to turn the corner. Okay? It's going to turn the corner. So this shape is coming around, turning the corner. And it's going to... there's another line here. I need a line right there, but this one's going to come and it's going to continue on, let's see, from here to here. So this one's going to come through, and this one's going to stop there. Now I can get rid of these inside corners. I can get rid of these inside corners. Okay, you can start to see a pattern emerge. Before we move on to the other four corners, let's clean this one up. I'm going to turn my guidelines on, and I have the guidelines to help me create my consistent lines. So I need a line right here. So I'm going to snap a line there and space bar to finish. This one, I need a line right here. Come in here, space bar to finish. And over here, I need a line right here. Space bar to finish. All right, let's turn the guidelines off and let's trim up and clean up what we just created. We'll trim this one here. Come up here and trim that there. Trim this one right here. And bingo. Okay, so we've got that pattern there. All right, now coming on, I need to this one here on the other side of this line is going to, making sure you guys aren't asking questions, bear with me a second. This one here, let's get rid of this line, don't need that there. This one here is going to be like this, and it's going to come around, right? It's going to come around, and it's going to come around and through, and it's going to stop at this line. This line right here, this line that connects here, this one comes through, and it'll be cut off in two spots here. We'll draw that in just a moment. So this line comes through here, and it's going to stop right there. Okay, working our way around. We can get rid of this corner, and this one is going to come around to here. This one, when it comes around, it continues on all the way to here, and it turns this corner. Okay, and we'll create our cutaway lines there. And so let's go ahead and clear away this vector, and let's clear away, we don't need these vectors anymore. All right, let's clean this corner up. Let's clean this corner up here. Let's come in and get our line tool, turn our grid on. And so I need a line right here. Space bar to finish. I need a line right here. All right, I missed my mark right there, so I'm gonna hit the escape key. Right click, and let's do that again. Polyline tool, make sure you land on your mark. Try to keep things somewhat consistent, right? All right, space bar to finish. All right, so that'll get trimmed there, this will get trimmed there, and this one, I need a line right here. Okay, and this one up here, I need a line right here, space bar, and I've already drew that one. All right, let's close off those guidelines, and let's do some trimming. Trim, 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 trim. Okay, you can start to see the pattern starting to take shape and everything. Okay, in here I don't need these center lines anymore. Let's go ahead and we can delete that. All right, now over here we've got, you know, this pattern coming around here like this. Well, this pattern does the same thing but backwards. It's kind of almost mirrored. I literally could take these two pieces that I've got here and mirror them to the other side and be done with it, right? But I'm just kind of showing you some methods and stuff here. So all of these lines right here, all these lines here up to this line get trimmed away. So let's trim these lines away. We're separating the two parts now. Okay, excellent. Kind of the two halves, if you will. Halves and the have-nots. And of course, I trimmed away the one of the wrong lines. Bear with me a second. This, let's go with trim. This one, that one stays there. And that one. All of our big lines, keep them intact. It's the little ones, you know, that we don't need once we don't need them. All right, now, hopefully you're following along. Over here, this one is going to basically kind of mirror this one, but it's a little different. It doesn't hook like this. It just stops. Okay, so they're rotated and everything. So let's go ahead and trim and clean up. So this is going to come around. Okay, it's going to come around, and it's going to come around and go through, but it's going to stop right here. Okay. This one is going to come around, come through, come through, come through, all the way to there, and then it's going to turn this corner all the way to there, and then I can get rid of those two inner lines there. All right, let's clean those up before we move on. This line here, this one continues straight across like that, but I need to turn get my line tool back open there, turn my grid on, and I need to draw a line here. And again, you don't have to do the whole thing. You can mirror and copy, right? I could have done half of it and mirrored it over and done the other half. So that gets trimmed there and there. And then this one gets trimmed here. Okay. Let's close that, open up our trim tool. Trim away, trim away, trim, 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 trim. So you can start to see the pattern emerging. You know, so now we don't need these lines anymore, right? And we only have one more to do and then we're home free. But just a little lesson in using guidelines and shapes. We started out with a rectangle. Put arcs at the two ends, offset it, made a copy of it, mirrored it, copied it. So we just started out with a simple shape to come up with, you know, kind of a unique pattern, right? And this is kind of a Celtic heart almost type design, if you want to kind of think of these as like hearts, right? In a sense, like a little weave pattern is essentially what we're creating. All right, let's go ahead and let's finish her up, right? So right here, let's go into our trim tool, and this line gets trimmed away right here. And this is going to come around, all right? And this one comes in and dead ends into this one. So it comes here, here, and it stops there. This one, we get rid of this corner. This one, trim away these lines and that. This one's the one that comes all the way around. It comes through. And then it turns this corner, okay? And it dead ends into that one. And then from there, we can get rid of our little lines in there. And let's see here. We can get rid of this line and this line, okay? And we can get rid of that line and that line. We can get rid of that line and that line. So we got just let's turn on our guidelines and do our final trim. All right, so on this one, this shape dead ends to here, so I need a line right here. Space bar to finish. And I missed my line, so undo that. I want to kind of make sure, I want to keep things nice and symmetrical, and it's snapping way off that guide. There we go. Space bar. Okay, so you kind of get lost a little bit right here. This line here to here, that gets trimmed there, and then I need a line right here to here. Usually there's just 3 per section. You work your way around one section at a time. Let's turn that off and trim, 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 trim. And I'm missing this one here. Gets cut off right here, and I'm missing that one right there. So we got to do 2 more little lines, and we're done. All right, so this one here, I need a line right here. And over here, I missed this one right here. I missed the line again. I missed my mark. Okay. All right. Let's go with our scissor tool, turn off our grid, and trim, trim. This line's a little crooked. I'm going to show you how to fix that. Okay. All right. So there is our inlay weave pattern, or what's going to be our little Celtic heart pattern. But I want to I'm kind of anal a little bit on some things, and these 2 nodes do not line up. All right. And, you know, I want to go into node editing, and normally, you know, I can hold down the shift key here and select this, and hold the shift key here and select this, and I could hit X or Y, but that's going to throw me off because I'm at an angle. I got to remember that, right? So let's go Control Z to undo that. What I want to do is I'm going to actually turn my grid line on, and I'm just going to snap it. And you'll see another guideline shoot off, you know, up here in the path that I'm moving, and it'll show me where to snap to, right? And same thing here. I'm just on my line there, optical delusion, and turn that off and straighten that out. All right, so how many I thought you had V-Day, Valentine's Day in mind when making that. Yeah, we could do that. But how many found that interesting? How many found that boring as hell? How many, learned maybe something off there with guidelines or whatever? Give me some feedback and let me see. Because we're gonna do one more that's a little bit quicker, but I want to create this Vcarve inlay here. So let's do our pocket cut. We're gonna go start at 0.2. And this will be my, I'm going to call it the Celtic heart pattern. Female inlay, 60 DEG V-bit. Okay, and calculate that. Reset the preview the selected toolpath. Oh, how deep did I go? Oh, 0.2, not 0.02. Laney, 0.2. Calculate. All right, preview that cut. Okay. All right, cool, man. All right, so guidelines are very helpful. Let's fill this in. So imagine it, imagine a different color inlay, right? But we have that cool little pattern. And if we put our, inlay around it. I'm just going to fill it in with black for color purposes, but because the tan doesn't show up very well. So I'll fill those in with black. And let's get this kind of squared up here like this. Be a nice inlay pattern. Of course, you would use contrasting colors, with that inlay. And of course, it doesn't, I wish we could fill that in with fill it in with resin or resin's a, good option. But that would be our female pattern. And then, of course, just like we did with the other Vcarve inlays, we would create a boundary around it. The boundary doesn't have to be perfect, what have you. We would take that and move it or copy it, sorry, to another layer. I'll call this our Celtic heart male inlay. Okay, turn off all the other layers. And on that Celtic heart, make sure it's bold and highlighted. We want to be able to read it up here, and we would mirror that. And flip it. Don't create a mirror copy. Flip it about Job Center and, mirror that. And of course, before I do that, let's make sure that my heart should be perfectly centered. But I am going to select it and just go to the alignment tool just to see. Yeah, it is centered. It's just my rectangle's not. Let's do the rectangle center just for once on one of these. There you go. All right, I just had it off centered. That way you can see it rotate, right? We'll flip that horizontally. And that will be our male. And once again, on our male Vcarve, it's going to be 0.18, 0.02. I'll use the 1/8 inch end mill to kind of clean out in there some. And this will be the Celtic heart pattern or California Highway Patrol CHP, one of the two. Celtic heart pattern male inlay, 60 DEG V-bit, whatever naming configuration works for you, make it happen. And then of course, we would cut out that male, clear out the edges and stuff, and we'd have our inlay. Okay, so, all right, so we got one more pattern that we're going to do. One more pattern that we're going to freehand draw. And we'll take this guy here and let's turn off that layer. Let's go into layer 3 here. Okay, so the next inlay pattern, and again, text, you know, you could do text inlays too. Vcarve, you would Vcarve your text inlays, right? All right, we're going to do this pattern, and then we'll finish with a text inlay, like a last name or something on this cutting board. We're going to customize this cutting board for someone or what have you, and we're putting their family name on it. We might do a split letter or whatever inlay, but we'll do that last. Let's finish up this design. So as far as patterns go, I just want to show you, you know, we could go online and find images and trace those patterns, but we can also create our own with very simple shapes, right? So here's our next shape. We're going to start off with an oval, and on that oval, I'm just going to pull an oval out about that size there. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go into node editing. And on this bottom span or this bottom node, I'm going to pull this in. And I'd like to have a consistent length for each of these, right? I want them to be the same. So how do we do that? Well, here's what we do. When you select a node or an anchor, okay, you're going to move it in a direction and pause, and then you're going to type in the distance you want it to move. So for an example, if I pull this out to the right and I type in 0.5 and hit enter, it's going to pull it out a ½ inch from where it was. Okay, let's undo that because I want to go inward. So I'm going to select this node and I'm going to pull it straight inward, and I'm going to pause, keeping my left mouse button held down, and I want to come in 0.1875 and hit enter. Okay. With me, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to grab this, pull it in this direction, and I'm going to type 0.1875 and hit enter. So that way they're consistent. Okay. All right, cool. So, you know, whenever you pull, even an anchor, you know, a node here, if I pull this to the right and I say 0.1875 and hit enter, it's going to move it that 1/8 of an inch from where it originally was. So that kind of thing. And so that way I can be consistent on my shape, because what I want is I want this to be almost kind of like a pedal where it comes down to just a little bit of a point. I actually might want to move in a little bit more. So let's pull that in a little bit more. Not too much. No, actually that's good. I'm going to leave it right there where it's at. All right, awesome. Okay, now I'm going to offset this shape inward, and I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch. Looks good to me, 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to take this shape, and what I'd like is I'm going to fatten it up just a little bit. I'm going to hold down my shift key. I'm going to grab this outside and just plump it up just a little bit. A little plump there. And I'm actually going to kind of squish it a little bit. Little squish there. All right. That looks good. Okay. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it up here, keeping it centered. I'm going to drag it right about there. Good. And I'm going to go into my circular array tool. Yes, you do not need plus or minus inputs. You just pull the node in the distance or in the direction you want it to go, and just type in your value. No plus or minus needed. Okay? Whatever direction you want to pull it in that direction, pause, and type in a value, and it'll continue in that direction, that distance from where it originally was. Okay? All right. I want to wrap this bad boy around. I want to come around 360 degrees from my center of my board. I want to go around 6 times here to create this kind of pattern here. And I'm going to make that a little bit smaller because it's a little bit too big for my cutting board, right? I need it to kind of still fit on my cutting board. So let's size this down a bit. I'm going to kind of size that down. I'm holding the shift key. Still want kind of that pedal shape where it's a little narrower at the bottom at the top. Now I'm going to offset that That looks good. All right, let's move that back up. I'm going to go right about here. Oops, I stretched it. Don't want to do that. I want to move it. I don't want to stretch it. Right about there is good. All right, circular array tool, circular copy. I want to make sure I click on this little dot here because I want 0, 0 rotation, and I want to go 6 times around, full 360 degrees to create that little pedal there. Okay. Does it work in the diagonal? So what he's asking for is if I had a line, let's go with a space here. Let's say I had some nodes, right? And let's go to node editing. And I was pulling that node in, or anchor, whatever, in a diagonal direction. All right. If I pull it in that direction and go 0.5 and hit enter, it's going to go in the diagonal, right? In that direction. You know, if I insert a point here and I pulled this one in this diagonal direction and went 0.5 enter, it would pull it up in that diagonal direction, whatever direction you're pulling the node. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right. Okay, now on this one, we're going to do some node editing and we're going to do some drawing. Okay, on this shape here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into node editing. And our inner vector, because we did kind of an offset, it created this multiple points here and everything, and that's okay. The outer vector only has our 4 nodes. The inner vector has all those multiple nodes. Now I could go into my curve fit tool right here, and I could say, you know, hey, I want, you know, Bezier curves or arcs, and I could, you know, create a tolerance, and I could, you know, tighten that up and get rid of some of those nodes. But it might distort my shape a little bit, and I'm not really worried about those nodes right at this point. Okay, I don't want to keep sharp corners here. So if I were to place that, you know, it would eliminate all those nodes. But you know, it's not. There's a little kink there. I'd have to, you know, if I go into node editing on this now, I've got these points here, and they're not really in the right spot, right? You know. I'd want, you know, them to be where they belong. So let's undo that. I don't want that. All right. Anyway, long story short, right here, right before we get to the point, right here, we're going to cut the vector here. Okay. And here we're going to cut the vector. Now we could do that, or we could have very simply just right-clicked, or well, not right-click, but in node editing, I could have... node editing. I could have put my mouse over this line and I could have, you know, deleted this span if I wanted to, right? Delete this span and everything. Okay. However, you know, whatever tickles your fancy. All right, let's go down here on this one, and right about before it starts to curve too much, right about here, I'm going to pick a spot. I am not going to be choosy where I cut and everything. And, you know, I could lay out guidelines so it was consistent, but this is kind of a free form. So let's go back into node editing and let's pick a spot right here and cut the vector. But I could lay out, ooh, don't do that. Cut the vector, not delete the span. There we go. I could, what am I trying to say? That's what I'm trying to say. I could go in there and draw guidelines and stuff, but we're going to lay off and do some freehand. So again, on these, this V right here, I'm going to just delete this span here and here. And of course, I want to delete this one too because it's not supposed to be there. All right, so I've got these 2 shapes cut. I'm going to grab my arc tool and I'm going to snap my line right to the end of there, and I'm going to snap my line there, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the arc down until I think it's pleasant looking, right? You know, and I can go in there and fine tune everything later. Now I'm going to bring my arc tool and snap it to where I cut this vector right here. And it'll snap right on that cut point where I cut that vector. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of snap to that cut point there. It'll snap right there. And I'm going to pull this down. And of course that snapped. Let's hit escape on that. Arc tool. I don't know what that other one was snapping to, but snap there. Zoom in. There we go. All right, now I'm going to pull this arc down. And again, just a very subtle arc and everything. And once I have that, I'm going to come in with my scissor tool and I'm going to trim, and I can do some cleanup here in a moment. Okay, can you see where we're going yet? All right, so over here, what I want to do is I'm just going to work my way around on the inside and get rid of all those points that were created. So I'm going to go into node editing. On every one of these, I'm going to delete these two spans all the way around on the inside. So delete this span and delete this span. Okay, I'm just going to work my way around. It'll be a little bit faster for me to do that. Delete span, delete span. Going into the right before the very last node, we're deleting that span right before the very point on all these all the way around. Delete that span. All right, and you know, from here I could just start drawing my shapes, my arcs, you know, on just the inside lines, and then come back and do the outside lines later. So this arc would snap from here to here, and then again I'm just gonna pull it to where, you know, I think it's soothing, right? And then this arc would snap from here to here. It's always the outside to outside. Pull that down where I think it's smoothing. From here to the outside here. About like that. And from here to the outside here. About like that. And once you draw a couple of arcs, it'll actually start snapping to those points, thinking, hey, this is what he did last time. Like, you know, when I come here, it'll, you know, snap kind of to that, you know, that shape. Just out of kind of memory and stuff. And all. In some cases, so that's pretty cool. So let's, there to there. And then from there, let's go into our bigger ovals now. Going to node editing, and once again, I'm going to, you know, pick a spot that I, you know, think is good. And for me, the spot that I think is great is where my arcs intersect, right? Right here on the big oval where my arc intersects, that'd be the perfect place to cut the vector, right? I missed my mark right here. I'll fix that node in a minute, but I'm going to cut the vector right here, come all the way around to this side, and I'm going to cut the vector here. Okay, and then I can take this and just hit delete, right? I can get rid of that. On this one here, once again, right on where these lines intersect. Cut here and cut here. While that's selected, hit delete. Working my way back to you. All right, working my way around. Go back into node editing and cut the vector. Cut the vector. And then hit the delete key. I'm hitting the delete key on the keyboard. Two more. One more. 1.5 more. Node editing. Cut the vector. Cut the vector. Hit the delete key. And then the last one, last but not least, right here. Actually, that's done. All right, so let's grab our arc tool and let's snap from here to here. And kind of pull an arc, you know, that we think looks good from here to here. Keep our lines consistent from here to here. Oh, I don't know where I was snapping to on that first one. Let's escape on that. I don't know what I was thinking on that one. From here to here. This one I've got to fix. It's a little bit too much, and I missed my mark on that. Remind me. And I missed my mark on that one too. Man, I missed my mark on a lot of them. All right. From here to here. And one more from here to here. All right, let's go into node editing. Let me fix a couple of mistakes that I made. This node should be snapped here. And this node is snapped there, but now I need to fix my arc. So we're going to pull that in just a little bit. There. My arc on this one, I missed my mark there. Go to there. That one's good, but I need to kind of fix my arc. It's a little bit too dramatic. Kind of want a nice, smooth transition. Right here, I need to pull this back to here and pull this back to y'all. And then I'll smooth that up a little bit. All right, let's go in and do some trimming. So we're gonna trim away all the inner lines. Okay. Oh. Gonna trim away, and I really missed the mark on that guy. Let's go to node editing and pull him down to there. I don't know what I was thinking there. Go with our trim tool. Oh, all right, so that tells me that this line does not connect. So I'm going to go into node editing, and I'm just going to pull that into that. And I got a little kinky kick right there, so I want to kind of straighten that up a bit. A little too much. Still a little crooked. All right, let's go ahead and trim that away. Okay, so and I lost an arc right there altogether. Let's put that back in. All right, so the one main thing that I want to make sure that I absolutely do is select all of this and go to my join tool and make sure that, you know, all of my vectors are closed. And there's still 3 open vectors in here. You know, these open vectors and stuff. And you see how my lines, you know, kind of screwed up here, right? They're not quite in line. Well, no worries. I'm going to use my extend tool. Okay, right here, my extend tool, and I'm going to click on here, and it'll create that perfect extension for me. Let's go in and even though you extend, that doesn't necessarily mean it's closed, so we got to go in and close it. But let's find out, select all open vectors. So this one's open as well. Let's zoom in. Missed my line. No worries. Let's go into node editing. What we'll do is we'll delete this span right here and this one. And we'll just use our extend tool and extend from here to here. Oh, you son of a gun. There we go. Now, just because we extended and connected doesn't mean they're joined. So we got to go into the join tool and close it. And it is closed. It did close it off, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that way. All right. So now we've got our little floral pattern here. If we wanted to, we could kind of take this inner shape and offset it, hold our shift and control key down, and we could kind of create a, a center piece to it as well. Kind of a center pattern or whatever the case may be. But, all right, so let's go ahead and let's create our Vcarve toolpath, 0 start depth, 0.2, 60-degree V-bit, calculate, reset the preview, preview the selected toolpath. Okay, let's give that a little bit of color as if we were going to inlay it with a, whatever the case may be. But, little things like that, guys and girls, right? So we can create those patterns. We can have some fun with it. This was just a quick and dirty example of, ways that we can take a simple shape, our oval, and come up with something different. If I took this pattern here, okay, I'm going to take this pattern here and I'm going to size it down, okay, kind of size it down, right? And I'm going to just move it up a little bit. Oh, that was not a move. That was a stretch. I'm going to move it up and snap it to here. Okay. I could take this and I want to group this together, group it together. But I could take this pattern and I could, around my 0, 0, I could bring this around even more. I could come in here and start doing some trimming of my overlap lines and start creating weave patterns and things. I could just, have some fun with it. If I didn't want it to overlap and have to do a lot of trimming and stuff, there's a flower of life hiding in the middle there that we could clean up and expose. But, if I didn't want it, to overlap, I could take and drag this up just a little bit. Not much, a little bit. And again, on my circular array, make sure I'm at 0, 0. And, I could come around. And now I could just come in and clean up on the overlapping lines. Let's come in here. Let's do some trimming. Let's ungroup this. Okay. Let's select everything first. And ungroup that. And on here, follow kind of the pattern, right? So let's trim away this, that, and we can start kind of working our let's see, I want to get rid of that line, that and get rid of that inner part, right? And now I'm getting a completely different pattern. Let's go in here and continue the process all the way around. Okay, a couple more. Two more. Zoom in, get that little guy. was upside down. I couldn't see the pattern in my head. All right, finally, let's wrap this up. Okay, so now we have, you know, this pattern. Think of like a doily, right? You know, like an old lace doily kind of deal, right? So simple, fun things like that. And all we started out with an oval, right? You know, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Now, of course, I would want this to be somewhat sized appropriately to fit my cutting board. You know, kind of in the center. And Vcarve Inlay 0 to 0.2. We don't need that. Calculate. Reset the preview the selected toolpath. You know, and just really nice. All they are is just really accent patterns to take a beautiful cutting board that you've made. Got a nice little, you know, just groove, nice little inlays and stuff around it, and just some patterns. Okay? All right. So for the last 10-15 minutes of class tonight, we're going to do a text inlay example, since we kind of played out all the shapes and stuff. But I just wanted to share this with you and just give you some things to think about, right? We started off with a rectangle, and by making a couple copies, turn them 45 degrees, mirroring them, and doing a little bit of trimming, we come out with that Celtic heart little pattern. We started out with an oval, offset, you know, changing it to where it looks like a little bit of a petal, offsetting it inward to create that double line, and then moving it up and mirroring it around, getting all that kind of connected together, sizing it down to an appropriate size, moving that up and mirroring it around again and trimming. We end up with this pattern here. You can do all kinds of things like that, and it's not, you don't have to be complicated with it. You know, everything kind of revolves almost around a flower of life. You know, if I took a circle here, and I took this circle, and if I just pull this circle up to my center line and I rotate around my center point, and I'm going to go 5 times around on this one, it creates that flower of life. Okay. And from here, you know, on the flower of life, I could take and size this up, and I could come in and offset those vectors inward. Let's go inward 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And now, cool tool, the mirror flip about line tool, the mirror tool. Notice that all my shapes did not fill in here, right? They didn't fill in. So I'm going to very simply take a line here. I'm going to draw a line straight at the center. Okay. And I'm going to go straight up. All right. Space bar to finish. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make that line a little bit longer, so you can, pull it. All right. And the first thing I need to do is I need to fill in this void with one of these shapes. So I'm going to take my line and I'm going to get on that rotation. I want my rotation at my center 0, 0 of that line. And I'm going to swing it around, and I'm going to snap it right between these two shapes. Okay. Let me get that really honed in there. Oh, that was a no. My line just like vanished. There's no undo or nothing. It vanished. I don't know what key I hit, but let's drag this out where we were. I don't know where that line disappeared to, but it went poof, right? All right, so I'm going to select this shape, hold down my line here, and I'm going to go into my mirror tool and make a mirror copy. and flip about line, right? So that's going to fill that void, okay? On my line tool here, my line, not my line tool, but on my line, I'm going to drag my snapping point to that center. Make sure I'm at my 0, 0 of that shape. There we go. And I'm going to rotate it around to here between these 2 points. Okay. Dadgummit, I'm off a little bit. Let me get right on there. All right, I'm going to select this shape, hold down my line tool, flip about line. That's going to fill it up there. All right, let's take our line and let's rotate it around again. Let's get it on the center there. Select this shape, select that line, flip about line. You know, making that copy. I got one more that I'm missing. Okay, select that shape, select the line, flip about line. We're making that copy. All right, and now we've just made the symbol for hazard, you know, for the zombie apocalypse. No, I'm just kidding. But with this here, with this here, I could pretty much, if I wanted to, I could take my circles and select all of them. And I could weld them together, okay, to create this pattern. And then, of course, I would probably want to put a little petal in the middle, you know, of that to create that life flower, right? All right, so all kinds of things that you could do. And then, of course, like I did with the other oops, don't do that. You know, move it up. Go around, you know, another time. Ooh, not that. 0, 0. Always go around your center. You know, bigger, 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 right? We could, you know, there's so many things we could do, but we're not going to get into all that. Let's get some text going here. But I just wanted to share a little bit of insights. You're learning how to flip about line and the mirror tool and, you know, all that good stuff, right? All right, let's move that over here. Okay. Let's go with some text. So I'm going to go with some royal signage here, and I'm going to go Peterson's. And let's center that on the board. Okay. Now let me stop before I move on to this. And why do you need the gap? Is it because you need a point to attach to? Blue Knight, what gap? Let me know what you mean. I missed that question. It was a while back ago. Would you like to hear about using DWC to cut inlays down to surface? Mike Pearson, would you like to hear about using DWC to cut inlay down to surface? Let me know. Area 51, LOL. Do you have to make all the lines connect? Or can you do something like a star on a flag? Like holy for the stars, and then purple heart for the fields. Yes, yes. Yeah, you could do your flag could be an inlay flag. You could do a beautiful inlay flag with your stars. Your stripes could be inlaid. You know, all of that stuff, right? It doesn't need to be shapes and all that things, you know, but you can do inlays. Beautiful. It would be a Vcarve Inlay, though, a Vcarve Inlay. Okay? All right, on the Petersons, let's go ahead and let's come in and I want to put a box around this. Let's offset that box outward. I'm going to go 3/16. This one I do want radius corners on. Yeah, that's good. Actually, I'm going to go sharp corners on this one. I'll let the inlay toolpath take care of that. The Vcarve can give me sharp corners, so I don't need, like I'm doing the Vcarve Inlay, so I don't need to radius that. All right, so let's go ahead and we may want to throw in all right, let's gonna stretch this one just a little bit. All right, let's get that centered. And let's do some trimming. This boundary right here, let's trim. All right, I want to connect. First of all, I got to convert my P here to a curve, convert it to a curve. That's this tool right there. Now I can do some trimming, interactive trimming. I could weld this in all as well. Yeah, why don't I just weld it? This shape and this shape, let's weld that together. Okay. I guess that's a P. It doesn't look like a P, but it could be. I'd probably adjust the shape on that just a little bit. Let me bear with me one second. I should have picked a name other than Peterson's. That's the hardest one. All right, let's get all that centered. Whoa. I don't know what is happening. But that literally just disappeared. I want to see if it went on another layer. Because if not, I'm kind of wondering where it went to. Because it just did. It was not the delete key. There was not anything. Where the heck did it go? Wow, that's spooky. And the Control Z key is not even cutting it. That P is gone. All right, let me see if the undo here, redo. That's just freaky. I have no idea where that went to. There's no undo or redo or nothing on it. It's just gone. All right, let's really quickly get caught back up here. I don't know where the hell that thing went to. Stranger than fiction. Wow. All right, let me offset that rectangle. There it goes again. That's gone. It's gone. Oh. I'm not sure what's happening. I'm going to hit save on this up to this point. 6 invalid vectors are found. Delete invalid vectors. Yes. Okay. It won't let me save because invalid vectors were found. Okay. I don't know. Maybe it's haunted by the flower of life. Weird. Okay, let's offset that outward again. That was strange. Strange. All right, let me select this here. Let's convert that to a curve. Let's select this outer boundary here. Let's weld that together. And let's take this and center it onto the material. Okay, cool. I got to consider. I'm gonna have to bring my juice groove out a little bit, you know, because of the size of this. But other than that, we are good to go. Now, this one is basically going to be 2 separate Vcarve toolpaths. Okay. The word Peterson's is going to get V-carved, and then the border and the P's. Now I got to go in here and trim this and fix that. Trim that. Okay. So the border and the P is going to be 1 inlay, then Peterson, because all this is going to be walnut around all the letters and everything. So it's going to be 2 separate inlays. It's not going to be one inlay and everything. Okay. Now we could do it as because it is a Vcarve inlay. If I come in here, if I select this like that, and 0 to 0.2, no flat, no end mill, 60-degree V bit. All right, I got overlapping vectors. I got to fix. It's the P in Peterson's right here. So let me close that because I know what it is. It is. I thought I knew what it was. Okay, let's let the vector validator tell me. Right down there. Okay. All right. Love that vector validator. Okay, one more time. We could select this and we could calculate the toolpath here. Reset the preview. Preview the visible toolpath. Okay, let's turn that off. So that would be our pocket cut. So we could do it as one toolpath. That'll be our pocket cut. And then we got to create our mirror copy. So let's put a boundary around this. Whatever size boundary it is. All of this gets copied to another layer. And this will be Peterson's Mel Inlay. Turn off our layers. Make sure that that layer is active. And then, of course, we're going to want to mirror. Flip it about job center. Make a mirror. Don't make a mirror copy. And mirror that. And then we create our meld toolpath. 0.18, 0.02. Calculate. Reset the preview, preview the visible toolpath. And it's going to be on a backer board. Remember, we cut away all the edges of our, whatever our piece is here. Those 4 sides get cut away. Table saw, bandsaw, handsaw, whatever the case may be. And then that'll get inlaid in. All right. So this will be the male part here. And the one thing you want to be mindful of is, again, don't go past your cutting height. All right, let me show you what happens if you go past your cutting height. Okay, let's say, for instance, that my pocket depth was 0.3. Okay, and I'm using a 60-degree 1/4-inch V-bit, and my female pocket was 0.3. And my male pocket, I've got to equal 0.3, right? So let's say that I was creating this male toolpath, Vcarve toolpath, and I needed something to equal 0.3. And in this case, I'm going to stick with, 0.15 and 0.15, right? Just for a total of 0.3. Okay. 0.15. Okay. And I'm going to calculate that. Reset this preview and preview that visible toolpath. Okay, let's zoom in here. Okay, you guys and girls see all these straight edges right here? That's our shaft colliding because the V cuts down here, right? That's where our bit is cutting. That's our shank colliding in there, right? That's our shank colliding in there, all these hard parts. And that part will not fit into our Vcarve pocket, right? So it's very important that you stay within your cut depth of your bit. Okay. All right. What we want is, we need those nice sharp peaks, hills, and valleys. Okay. Yeah, suicide at all times. I have no idea what happened to those shapes and squares and all what I was drawing. I don't know. I mean, I didn't hit no magic disappear key with no undo, I could always undo something. But when this carves, we want those nice, sharp peaks, hills, and valleys, and everything. We want those nice angled walls, okay? Not necessarily sharp. This is the flat of the P, the big P won't be sharp, but we want those angled walls. We don't want to see any straight meat on here. We need that to fit down into that V-shaped letter, right? All right, so that would be our male cut. Then we would come, of course, and we would cut those 4 edges away. And again, glue it together, nice clamping pressure. And, we could do kind of a nice inlay. We could do, like if you were doing signs and stuff, wedding signs, Holly and Jason, February 10th, 2021, whatever the case may be, those, they don't have to be V-carved or raised text. No, you could do them as an inlay, right? You could do all kinds of neat things. Your lines, little nice line designs and stuff. So Vcarve Inlay is wonderful for that, really kind of accents and all. You can have some fun. All right, so that's going to kind of conclude the lesson for today. All right. I'll create some patterns and files for you guys and girls, or some designs, inlay designs for y'all. And I'll probably create a little DXF folder for you of some different patterns and stuff, some nice inlay patterns and all. And those files will be available in the description of the video and all that. So
Let's kind of see if I had any missed questions. You said when the inlay glued in, you could cut and saw or sand the DWC down the inlay. Yeah. Yes. So you can take and when you do an inlay, you can surface that inlay down to the cut. I don't have a video of the digital wood carver doing that, but I'll give some kudos to, bear with me a second here, youtube.com. What is it MD Woods, MT Wood? Inlay. Cutting board. I should know this guy by heart. Okay. That's Brian Wood. Brian Wood does some beautiful work as well. Now, in this video example here, look at that inlay. Freaking, and it's Vcarve, detailed cuts, and all that wonderful stuff. Let me go down and see if I can find. I don't think MT Wood changed his name to Brian Wood. Maybe he did change his name to Brian Wood. No, Brian Wood's someone different. Bear with me. I'm trying to show you a. Guys, help me out here. Who's that? He's makes some beautiful. MTM Wood, MTM Wood, MTM Wood, MTM Wood, MTM I would. I forgot the M. I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Let's grab a. Let's pick an inlay. Any inlay. Mute this. And let's give the old commercial. MTM Wood makes some beautiful cutting boards. If you've never seen his YouTube channel, check it out. He works in the Vectric software as well. And he's got his little CNC cranking. Okay. So let's see here. Got to get past the commercial again. I want to get past where we have the skip the ad. Okay. So he's starting the second part of the inlay. So let's get it. There's his son. They glue up. All right, let's back it up now. MTM. There you go. All right. So once all this is done, he'll take his CNC, especially on bigger inlays. He might not do it in this video. He might show it, and I'm like, but he'll, you surface it. Run a surfacing toolpath over the inlay. Surface it right down to size. Let me see here. He's got a lot of inlays going on here. So it's inlay after inlay after inlay with MTM Wood. And he makes some beautiful inlays. You guys and girls, check out his channel. He makes beautiful cutting boards. His cutting boards are beautiful. All right, so let's get to the final inlay shape. Okay. Hold on, he's got to get the stars in. He's got to get the rest of the shape in. Okay. So after 2 days of gluing up, right? He's gonna clamp on the CNC, And then his CNC is going to go through and surface everything again. Another commercial. Ashley Home Furniture. They don't. Come on, man. Isn't that amazing? But his final process, he ran this one through the planer, but in the processes earlier, for each one of those steps, he's putting them on the CNC machine on all those pieces and everything, and he's surfacing them down for the getting ready for the next one, getting ready for the next one. You're gonna have some amazing things, right? And check out MTM Wood. Make some great channels, make some great inlays and stuff, and all that stuff. Let's see here. Thank you. That was great. Let's see. Thank you, Lane. It was awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Does the inlay Toolpath tool only work with end mills? Yes, Robert Casa. The inlay Toolpath only works with end mills. Yes, it does. Another great presentation. Thank you. And I watched the Samurai one, and I could think what. Right. The Samurai one. That Samurai one is beautiful. That Brian Wood did. Yeah, could you imagine power going out? But yeah. So I mean, those are just inlays on top of inlays on top of inlays on top of inlays, right? And some amazing things. We're just doing simple inlay, right? One inlay and all that, but we could create some contrast in color, and really just bring it up. But I just wanted to show you a little bit about the Vcarve Inlay. I want to talk about, we did our regular pocket inlay with our juice groove. Nothing exciting about that. But I wanted to talk to you about, creating patterns, vectors, working with guidelines, nodes, and stuff to help with your layout. Hopefully you guys have some fun and create some cool inlays and share them with me. And if you're on Facebook, you can share them on the Spindle TV Facebook page. I'd love to see them. All right, everybody. Until next time, I will see you soon. Have a great night.